Look into a world where dominance is not just an attribute of power, but the cornerstone of life itself. Imagine a thinker so bold and defiant that his teachings challenge all established notions of morality, empathy, and the essence of humanity. What if the virtues we hold so dear, mercy, meekness, and forgiveness, are actually shackles that keep us from achieving true greatness? This is precisely the viewpoint Friedrich Nietzsche advocated. And today, we will delve into the heart of his controversial philosophical reflections to answer the thought-provoking question: why does nature reject weakness? Do not switch channels, for the final revelation will radically transform your perception of yourself and the reality around you. At the core of Nietzschean philosophy lies a profound aversion to weakness, directed not only at others but also at oneself. But what exactly did the philosopher mean by this concept? Nietzsche was not talking about physical fragility or fleeting difficulties. He meant a much deeper and more dangerous form of powerlessness: submission to mediocrity, a tendency to obey, and an unwillingness to take responsibility for one's own destiny. According to the philosopher, a significant portion of humanity prefers to take the path of least resistance, accepting weakness as a given, instead of striving for the heights of greatness. Nietzsche viewed weakness not simply as an absence of strength, but as a specific mindset characterized by a rejection of life's challenges and an unwillingness to delve into the inherent chaos of existence. But what led Nietzsche to so harshly criticize such a position? To understand this, it is necessary to delve into his view of human potential and the forces that, in his opinion, hinder its realization. Nietzsche's critical analysis begins with his concept of slave morality, a term that reflects his deep rejection of the values actively promoted by society, especially organized religion. Slave morality, according to Nietzsche, elevates weakness by extolling qualities such as humility and self-sacrifice, which the philosopher considered merely survival tools for those deprived of power. These values, Nietzsche argued, arise from a sense of resentment and indignation, which he termed ressentiment. Imagine a person feeling helpless in the face of those with greater power. Instead of striving to overcome their weakness, they create moral systems in which strength is portrayed as evil, and weakness, on the contrary, as virtue. It is in this, according to Nietzsche, that the source of many values that modern society considers worthy lies. In modern society, it is not difficult to notice a tendency to praise the position of the victim rather than triumph, or to quickly criticize ambition and assertiveness, which are often mistaken for arrogance. Friedrich Nietzsche considered such a mindset extremely dangerous, believing that it hinders the acceptance of the will to power, the fundamental driving force underlying all human achievements. It is important to note that the will to power, in his understanding, is not a desire to dominate others, but rather a relentless self-overcoming. The philosopher viewed life as a continuous struggle, a complex dance between chaos and order, destruction and creation. In his opinion, the greatest personalities are those who boldly accept this challenge, who take the raw material of existence as a basis and transform it into something outstanding. Weakness, on the other hand, manifests itself in a refusal to participate in this struggle, in a flight into the zone of comfort, conformism, and self-pity. It is worth pausing and reflecting. Each person has probably felt the pull of these two opposing forces, the desire to rise above circumstances and the temptation to succumb to fear, doubt, or the pressure of external judgments. Nietzsche challenges everyone. Is he ready to succumb to the comfort of weakness? Or will he accept the challenge of his own existence, striving for self-overcoming and greatness, with a deeper immersion into the philosophical inquiries of Friedrich Nietzsche, his iconic concept of Übermensch, or the Overman, appears. The Übermensch is the epitome of the ideal human, an individual who rises above established moral norms and creates his own system of values. In Nietzsche's worldview, the Übermensch embodies a complete rejection of weakness and cowardice. Such a person does not need external authorities to show him the way, but fully accepts his uniqueness and the chaotic nature of being, transforming them into a meaningful existence. But why is this ideal so rare? Nietzsche was convinced that society actively hinders its appearance through various control mechanisms, whether religious dogmas, political systems, or cultural attitudes. Society cultivates conformism and mediocrity, suppressing manifestations of individuality. It is enough to recall the rules we are forced to follow, the expectations placed upon us, and the subtle ways we are taught to prioritize safety over risk and stability over personal growth. Nietzsche called for a rebellion against these oppressive forces. He inspired us to embrace the discomfort inherent in existence, to bravely face life's adversities, and to create meaning in a world that does not inherently offer it. However, it must be acknowledged that the chosen path of self-overcoming is not without its thorns and trials, requiring unwavering will and fortitude of spirit. Friedrich Nietzsche, a perceptive thinker and philosopher, recognized that breaking free from the shackles of accepted social norms and confronting one's own flaws and vulnerabilities requires immense courage and determination. At the same time, he firmly believed that only through overcoming oneself and one's weaknesses can one achieve true freedom and full self-realization. Nietzsche's famous phrase, which has become a kind of motto for many generations, states, "That which does not kill me makes me stronger." However, this statement should not be taken as a call to passively accept suffering and adversity. Rather, it is an invitation to view every life difficulty, every challenge of fate, as a valuable opportunity for personal growth and spiritual development. As we delve into the essence of Nietzschean contempt for weakness and cowardice, we inevitably face the question, are we ourselves ready to confront our weaknesses and shortcomings? Do we possess enough courage to look into the abyss of our own fears and doubts, to challenge the values that we have been instilled with since childhood, and to create a life filled with meaning, purpose, and inner strength? Or will we, like many others, prefer to succumb to the temptation of comfort and mediocrity, abandoning the pursuit of greatness? Let us delve into a critical analysis of the Nietzschean concept of weakness and consider how his ideas resonate in the complexities and contradictions of the modern world. The philosophy of Friedrich Nietzsche is not just a critique of established social values, but rather a detailed plan for personal transformation, a call for each of us to reject the surrounding grayness and mediocrity and awaken the dormant potential within us. For a comprehensive understanding of Nietzschean contempt for weakness, it is necessary to delve into the origins of this feeling. Nietzsche was convinced that weakness is a product not of nature, but of culture. Society, in his view, generously rewards conformism, while individuality is punished. It is enough to look at the systems that rule our lives. Educational institutions where obedience is valued more than creativity, workplaces where compliance prevails over innovation, and religious teachings that elevate obedience over self-expression. Nietzsche argued that these systems perpetuate a culture of weakness, discouraging people from questioning authority and challenging the existing order of things. It is worth considering how this manifests itself in everyone's personal life. Has anyone experienced pressure to suppress their true essence in order to conform to social norms? Has anyone felt guilty for striving for more success, more freedom, more meaning? Nietzsche's philosophy represents a radical rejection of this pressure. It calls for a return of one's own power, to question the rules we have been taught to follow, and to create our own unique path. At the heart of Nietzsche's critique of society is his deep understanding of herd mentality. The philosopher viewed the herd as a faceless mass, obediently following accepted norms without bothering to question their truth or expediency. This herd instinct flourishes on the soil of fear, the fear of standing out from the crowd, of failing, of taking on the burden of responsibility for one's own life. This is a worldview that seeks comfort in conformism and avoids the torments associated with the manifestation of individuality. However, Nietzsche saw individuality as the quintessence of human existence. For him, the real tragedy lies not in the failure that has befallen, but in an unrealized life, wasted on avoiding risks, suppressing one's own aspirations, and conforming to other people's expectations. He proclaimed, "The individual has always had to struggle to keep from being overwhelmed by the tribe. If you try it, You will be lonely often and sometimes frightened. But no price is too high to pay for the privilege of owning yourself. It is worth considering how often people sacrifice their uniqueness for the approval of others. How often they choose comfort instead of sincerity. Nietzsche's call is complex but necessary. Does one have enough courage to accept their uniqueness, even if it means loneliness? According to the philosopher, this courage is the very essence of human existence, a willingness to face life's uncertainties head-on, embrace chaos, and create meaning in a world that doesn't offer it freely. It's the path to the Übermensch, the Superman, who rises above the herd instinct and lives life by their own rules. So, where do we begin our ascent to the heights of self-realization? Nietzsche offers a concept known as amor fati, which translates to love of fate. This isn't just a humble acceptance of life's blows, but an active embrace of the entire spectrum of human experience, whether it's the bright moments of happiness or the dark streaks of adversity. To love one's fate, according to the philosopher, means seeing every event as a catalyst for personal growth and every trial as an opportunity to demonstrate one's inner strength. Imagine looking at your life through this lens. Instead of resenting difficulties, you perceive them as a crucible, tempering your spirit. Instead of trembling before failure, you embrace it as a necessary step on the path to triumph. Nietzsche was convinced that this mindset opens the doors to realizing our potential. However, let's be honest, embodying amor fati in life is no easy task. It requires a radical restructuring of one's worldview, a willingness to let go of past grievances, to stop searching for someone to blame for your failures, and to take full responsibility for your life. Nietzsche's philosophy is a challenge for those seeking easy paths. It demands courage, resilience, and unwavering determination in the pursuit of self-improvement. But the reward for these efforts is immeasurable. To live like the Übermensch, Superman, means to experience the fullness of life, to find satisfaction in overcoming difficulties, to see meaning in chaos, and to draw strength from confronting adversity. It means living a life that truly belongs to you. As we embark on the next stage of our exploration, let's delve into the question of applying Nietzsche's ideas to the complex realities of the modern world. How do we overcome the shackles of the herd instinct in an era of pervasive social media, where uniformity is often encouraged and the expression of individuality is suppressed? How can we cultivate the inner strength necessary to embrace our own fate in a world that seems to be plunged into chaos and uncertainty? These questions will serve as a starting point for further reflection. Stay with us, because the ideas that will be presented have the power to radically change your perception of yourself and your place in this world. It should be remembered that the main revelation is yet to come, a truth so profound that it can turn all your ideas about life and power upside down. Let's try to relate Nietzsche's philosophy to the challenges of the modern world, where the confrontation between individuality and conformity feels particularly acute. Nietzsche's warnings about the dangers of herd thinking sound more relevant today than ever in an era dominated by social media, mass culture, and global interconnectedness. The main question that requires reflection is this: how to resist the temptation of mediocrity in a world that constantly demands submission and rejection of one's own uniqueness. In Nietzsche's era, the collective herd manifested itself in the form of strict social institutions and the unshakable influence of organized religion. In our days, the herd has transformed, but its prevalence has not diminished at all. Pay attention to how social media platforms stimulate conformity through algorithms designed to encourage mainstream views and suppress alternative viewpoints. Think about how often we censor our thoughts and feelings to conform to the carefully selected versions of reality that we display on the internet. This is the modern manifestation of herd thinking, an updated version of the very forces that Nietzsche criticized. The philosopher would undoubtedly argue that social networks only exacerbate weakness, encouraging superficial communication instead of deep reflection, popularity instead of sincerity, and conformity to generally accepted norms instead of individuality. Each like, repost, and retweet only reinforces the values of the herd, subtly shaping our behavior and accustoming us to seek approval from others. However, Nietzsche's philosophy points the way to liberation. It calls on us to reclaim our authenticity, resist the urge to conform, and build a life that reflects our true selves. In an era of pervasive digital technology, when virtual space has become an integral part of our lives, the question of the authenticity of existence becomes particularly acute. This is not about denying technological progress or fleeing from society, but about wisely using modern tools for self-expression, and not for suppressing one's individuality. It's important to ask yourself, do my social media posts truly reflect my values, or am I just seeking approval from others? Am I living for myself, or am I trying to fit into molds created by others? In seeking answers to this question, it's helpful to turn to the concept of the Übermensch, proposed by Friedrich Nietzsche. The Übermensch is not a recluse who avoids society, but a creator, an individual who uses their unique perspective to build a new world, rather than blindly following its currents. In practice, this means developing self-awareness, embracing discomfort, and prioritizing one's own values over societal expectations. However, how do you cultivate such a mindset in a world that constantly pushes us in the opposite direction? Nietzsche's philosophy offers 3 key principles. First, you must learn to value solitude. Nietzsche argued that true self-knowledge requires moments of solitude, when we can reflect on our thoughts and desires without external influence. The great man, he wrote, is he who in the midst of the crowd keeps with perfect sweetness the independence of solitude. Solitude in this context is not merely the absence of company, but the creation of space for self-analysis and self-exploration. Second, you must cultivate an unyielding resilience of spirit. Friedrich Nietzsche's famous saying, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger," embodies his deep conviction that life's trials have an amazing ability to transform a person. Difficulties should be seen not as annoying obstacles to be avoided at all costs, but as unique opportunities to fully test and strengthen one's character. The next time fate teaches you a painful lesson in the form of failure, ask yourself important questions. What valuable knowledge can I learn from this situation? How will this experience help me become stronger and wiser? Third, take full responsibility for your own life. Nietzsche vehemently rejected the common practice of blaming external forces for one's failures and life circumstances. He was convinced that true human strength comes from consciously managing one's decisions and actively creating one's own destiny. This does not mean ignoring the harsh reality of systemic oppression or denying the existence of social barriers, but rather resolutely refusing to allow them to completely define your personality and life path. It's about relentlessly seeking ways to overcome these obstacles, being able to adapt to difficult conditions, and striving to thrive despite all the hardships and adversities. Now let's turn our attention to the emotional dimension of Nietzsche's philosophy. At its core, his criticism of weakness is not a harsh condemnation, but rather a vigorous call to action. He was well aware that the struggle against manifestations of weakness is a deeply human experience, inevitably fraught with fear, doubt, and feelings of insecurity. And however, he also believed that it is this relentless struggle that gives life its true meaning and value. Surely, each of us has experienced periods of deep reflection when we were overcome by doubts about our own strengths, purpose, or significance. Friedrich Nietzsche's philosophical views draw our attention to such pivotal moments. He convinces us that doubt is not a mark of defeat, but a powerful stimulus for personal growth. It is in moments of uncertainty that we have a unique opportunity to face our weaknesses, overcome our limitations, and become stronger in spirit. Think about the difficulties you face in life. Perhaps you feel trapped in a job that stifles your creative potential, a relationship that hinders your development, or ingrained beliefs that bind you. Nietzsche would ask you a direct question. Are you ready to boldly face these challenges? Are you ready to embrace the inevitable discomfort of change in order to create a life that fully reflects your true potential? As we approach the final part of our exploration, we will reveal the deepest thought in Nietzsche's philosophy, a revelation that can radically change your perception of yourself and the world around you. This is the main challenge that Nietzsche throws to all of humanity: to have the courage to look into the abyss, to accept the chaos of existence, and to create meaning in a world that does not offer it on its own. Stay with us, because the final part is not just an ending, but a new beginning, a call to awaken the power dormant within you and live a life filled with purpose, authenticity, and inner strength. Approaching the zenith of Nietzschean philosophy, we encounter a concept as insightful as it is demanding, forcing us to face the fundamental aspects of our being. The core of Nietzschean critique of weakness lies in the call to transcendence. This is the ultimate task he sets for humanity: to behold the abyss of life's uncertainty, to recognize the absence of inherent meaning within it, and to embrace its chaotic essence, so as to be reborn stronger, more authentic, and more alive than ever before. For Nietzsche, life is not a riddle to be solved, but a canvas awaiting vivid strokes, a dance longing to be performed. The weak-spirited perceive life as a burden, weighed down by obstacles and suffering, while the strong, the very Übermensch, see in it a limitless prospect. They welcome its chaos, its unpredictability, and its trials as the raw material from which something extraordinary can be crafted. But how can one achieve this elevated version of oneself? Nietzsche's answer is both inspiring and awe-inspiring. We must become creators. This does not necessarily mean becoming artists or inventors, although that is not excluded. It is about taking responsibility for shaping one's own life, for choosing personal values, and for defining one's own destiny. Creation, in Nietzsche's philosophy, is the highest manifestation of the will to power, for it requires us to confront the gaping void of existence and fill it with our own hard-won meaning. At this point in our reflections, the fascinating concept of eternal recurrence enters the stage, an intellectual challenge proposed by Nietzsche to rethink our life's journey. Imagine the thinker urged that fate repeatedly returns you to live the same life, in all its minute details and nuances, for an infinite eternity. Every decision made, every action taken will invariably repeat in this endless cycle. How would such awareness transform your attitude towards life? Would you embrace each moment with gratitude and enthusiasm, realizing that it will forever echo in space and time? Or would you retreat in confusion, gripped by regret and fear of the inevitable? Nietzsche presented this idea not as a dogmatic truth, but as a powerful tool to stimulate a conscious, courageous, and sincere life. Eternal recurrence forces us to face a fundamental question. If your life were doomed to endless repetition, would you be proud of its current course? Consider this question in the context of your own destiny. Are you living in accordance with your deepest values and aspirations? Do you meet life's challenges head-on, or do you avoid them, paralyzed by fear of possible failures? Nietzsche's philosophical views call on us to perceive existence not as a heavy burden to be borne, but as a unique opportunity for creation, as a work of art born from our decisions, overcome difficulties, and achieved victories. But what is the abyss that Nietzsche is so warned about, claiming that a close look into its depths inevitably leads to its staring back at the viewer? This metaphor reflects the existential challenge thrown at us face to face with life's uncertainties. The abyss symbolizes emptiness, the absence of original meaning in the universe. For many people, the realization of this fact instills horror, but Nietzsche saw it as liberation. The absence of a predetermined meaning is not a curse, but a priceless gift, because it gives us the freedom to create our own destiny and live in accordance with our own beliefs. Nietzsche insisted that we must embrace this freedom, reject the comforting illusions of external authority, whether religious dogmas, established traditions, or social expectations, and take full responsibility for our lives. This is not an easy task, requiring us to face our fears, doubts, and weaknesses with unwavering honesty. However, according to the philosopher, this is the only way to find true strength and full self-realization. In summarizing this study, it is worth reflecting on the valuable lessons that Friedrich Nietzsche's figure teaches us. The philosopher argues that weakness is not some kind of predetermination, but a conscious choice, a certain mindset in which a person prioritizes comfort over personal growth, conformism instead of individuality, passivity rather than active activity. Strength, on the other hand, represents the courage to face life's challenges, embrace chaos, and create one's own meaning where it seems to be absent. This path is certainly not for the faint of heart. It requires incredible resilience, deep self-analysis, and unwavering devotion to the idea of self-overcoming. However, the reward for passing this path is truly great. Life in the style of the Übermensch is a fullness of sensations, the ability to find joy in struggle and to create a legacy that reflects the true essence of a person. In conclusion of this study, the author invites the reader to reflect on the question: does he have enough courage to look into the face of the abyss? Will he be able to accept the chaos of existence and create his own meaning? Or will he prefer to retreat into a cozy haven of weakness, allowing the opinion of the majority to dictate the conditions of his existence? This choice, as the author emphasizes, remains with everyone, and no one can make it for him. One should remember the words of Nietzsche himself: become who you are. The path to greatness lies not in avoiding life's difficulties, but in accepting them, not in seeking comfort, but in creating one's own purpose, not in blindly following the crowd, but in paving one's own unique path. The author expresses gratitude to the readers who shared this fascinating journey into the world of Nietzsche's deep and provocative philosophy with him.